does the FBI set people up? Why do they frame people? Why do they orchestrate plots and then bust people in the process of, quote, carrying them out? Well, one answer, in the case of the Whitmer plot, was they were trying to help Joe Biden get across the finish line. Because the very idea that you've got sort of this right-wing militia and they're trying to kidnap a Democratic governor, it feeds the left's narrative that the greatest danger in America is coming from white supremacist extremism. So that's what made this whole story so tantalizing to the media at the time. And remember, this was just 2 weeks before the election. But there's a second motive that often doesn't get focused on, and this is the FBI setting people up and framing them in order to fortify the fear that keeps the FBI at center stage, that keeps feeding the FBI's huge budgets. If this seems like a bit of a far-fetched argument, it isn't. Here is FBI Assistant Director Thomas Fuentes. This is going back to 2009. Making a very candid admission, and he says this, I'm not quoting him. If you're submitting a budget proposal for a law enforcement agency, for an intelligence agency, you're not going to submit a proposal that says we won the war on terror and everything's great. Why not? He goes, because the first thing that's going to happen is your budget's going to be cut in half. So the guy is basically saying we got to keep the fear alive. Not the hope alive, but the fear alive. Because as long as people think this could happen to me, they're willing to support, and elected officials are willing to support, more money flowing to the deep state. Now, we know about the Whitmer plot, a plot in which the FBI was involved in every stage, and it's really clear that this plot would not have gone forward without the FBI. In fact, one of the FBI's informants was the second in command in charge of putting the plot, executing the plot and bringing it to fruition. The primary impetus came from the FBI. It was the FBI's plot, not the plot of these handful of by and large, dislocated, confused, angry young men. But Glenn Greenwald, who's been reporting on the FBI and on the deep state for a long time, says that the FBI began this kind of operation, framing people, with the war on terror. And he gives a number of cases that are really eye-opening. In 2015, the FBI flamboyantly praises itself for arresting 3 Brooklyn men on charges of providing material support to the Islamic State of Iraq. So apparently these are 3 guys supposedly trying to aid ISIS in its fight against America. But as you begin to look closer to what these 3 guys did, apparently it was all talk. In fact, the FBI itself said that the threats of violence were, quote, aspirational. Aspirational means we kind of wish we did it. And so there was no even implication, let alone activity, that suggests that these suspects were close to actually staging an attack, large or small. These are basically people in their late teens or early 20s. A lot of them are in no position to do any of this. And what does the FBI do to set them up? Well, it sends an older Muslim man to gain their trust. And this older man basically says, listen, you got to pursue this plan concretely, and let me guide you in how to do that. He befriends them. He actually moves in with them. He spends months convincing them that they need to go and visit the Islamic State. There's no point in trying to help an organization that you haven't seen close up. And just when the guys plan to do that, boom, they're busted. Oh, we got some terrorists and so on. And you can see again, give us more money, says the FBI, because we're so good at this. We are able to grab these terrorists before they do real harm to the American people. And this is the FBI's MO now. This is basically a rogue agency, far more dangerous than the so-called criminals that they supposedly go after. Here's another case that Greenwald covered, 2011. The FBI arrests a guy named James Cromedy. This is an African-American guy who converted to Islam. And he's accused of a terror plot where repeatedly he says, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And the FBI talks him into it. The FBI, in a sense, says, no, you got to do it. You got to do it. And finally, he goes ahead. And the judge, who actually sentences the guy, gives him a heavy prison sentence, nevertheless says that, quote, the defendant was incapable of committing an act of terrorism on his own. And then this telling statement, quote, there is not the slightest doubt in my mind that James Cromedy could never have dreamed up the scenario in which he actually became involved. So who dreamed it up? Answer, the Federal Bureau of Investigation.